All right, mortgage applications rose 6% this morning, and home prices fell last month. A key part of this equation is appraisals, of course. New laws have tried to keep appraisers from juicing up values to justify bigger mortgages. These days, appraisers are more likely to undervalue to avoid any whiff of fraud. Darius Bazorgi of Veros Capital Management says automating the appraisal process will keep it fair. Fannie and Freddie have hired Veros to do just that, but Dave Wallace disagrees. Wallace has designed similar software for appraiser Foster Owsley and used it as a mortgage banker as well, but now he's soured on the idea. Is that the case? I was wondering when I read about this. I mean, you designed this stuff, and yet you're not in favor of it?
No, not completely true. I think that the automated appraisal valuation model certainly has its place in the industry, and it's just pushing it all the way to the forefront on the origination side. It can create some pressures within the appraisal community to where you may or may not get an accurate valuation on the other side. I think these systems depend on historic data as opposed to what may currently be happening in the marketplace, and that may result in suppressing values as we try to come out of this recovery period going forward.
Darius, what do you think? I mean, does your system somehow account for local changes? Isn't it key to put in local input, color maybe that wouldn't be able to be input with software?
We certainly take into account local changes, data that, for example, an individual appraiser cannot take into account on a massive basis. But the real issue here is about validating valuation data. You know, the second part, the key part that's been ignored through the boom and for the last several years has been the appraisal side of the mortgage. We focused historically just on the credit side, but ignored the valuation side. Now what you're seeing in the secondary markets, you mentioned the GSEs, is an effort to validate that data, get that data before they buy these loans, before they acquire these pools, and make a more informed decision. Better identify the risk, better price the risk.
Are you saying we would have avoided the financial crisis that we saw if we had had this system in place?
I don't know if we would have avoided it, but it would have been significantly mitigated. Most people don't understand in the secondary markets, you know, right now a lot of people are talking about what's going on with the GSEs, but this isn't necessarily a GSE issue. It's a secondary market issue. It was the private label side which really led us into the abyss, so to speak. But the
Dave, I can see some skepticism over there.
Well, I'm not sure would have mitigated to that degree, because the value is driven by demand, and the demand was created by the availability of easy credit to homeowners that maybe should have not have purchased some of the homes that they bought. So as that demand took place and those transactions closed, your models would have tapped into that data and supported values as they climbed up.
I disagree. The fact is the secondary market wasn't getting this information across the board. No appraisal data, for example, was flowing into the secondary markets pre-purchase. And when loans went bad, obviously, as we saw, there was no one to put those loans back to. Now, I mean, the real answer is people are talking about new structures, for example, for the GSEs, whether it should be insurance funds, private insurance companies, lender-sponsored co-ops, but they're ignoring what the true issue is. What were the processes which led us to this? And one of the major processes is that this data wasn't being verified. It wasn't being validated.
Well, it seems like there were a lot of things, a perfect storm, if you will.
Without a doubt.
And this was maybe one component.
This is one major component.
My concern is if you're saying that you could have mitigated, the only thing that really would have mitigated would be to suppress the demand, and suppressing that demand would have kept prices low. And so the appraisal process is not going to suppress that demand.
Right, hang on a sec. Just hold on that point, because we want to continue our conversation. Talking with Dave and Darius, and we're going to continue talking about the housing market, real estate appraisals when we come back. You're watching Street Smart on this Wednesday.
All right, so let's get back to Darius Bazorgi of Veros Capital Management and Dave Wallace, both of whom have created automated appraisal systems. Yours is being used now by Fannie and Freddie. You sold yours, but you say you don't think it's the best way to go about judging the value of a home nationally. You do think, though, that it can have its positive aspects when used in conjunction with a real live person who knows the area.
Absolutely. The significance and the importance of physical inspection of the asset can't be understated. There's just time and time again where homeowners have made illegal additions to properties where that could significantly have an effect on the overall value of the underlying asset as it relates to the security for the mortgage. And you cannot find those things all the time in the automated valuation model.
And that's what I'm thinking. Fannie and Freddie got themselves into big trouble by automating the mortgage underwriting business. I mean, don't we need to have as many humans, not that they're perfect by far, but crawling over all of this data to make sure we get it right?
You need both, and that's the issue. I agree with Dave on this, because historically we looked at issues such as valuation in these compartmentalized silos. We would only use appraisals in this situation, or AVMs in this situation, or BPOs on the servicing side.
You need to talk to BPOs. What is
broker
all this?
Price opinions.
And what's the other?
Conducted by a realtor.
Okay.
Which is another type of valuation product used heavily on the servicing side of the business. And these were all compartmentalized. Now, what you see the current trend is to use these things in concert, use these very valuable tools to bump up against one another, to find discrepancies. And where you do identify issues where maybe an appraisal may be inflated or a BPO may have some inherent conflict, then you can follow up with some additional diligence and try to flush out the problems.
David, sounds like a good system.
Well, there's a lot of value to it, but I think you made a very good point that when we had some of the challenges that we had in the housing industry as a result of some of the automation and some of the, automated things, FICO score underwriting only, and automated appraisal reviews and things like that. When all of these things come together, and then we have the collapse that we've had, we need to be very careful that when we move back away from some of those processes, some of those systems, that we don't just wipe everything off the table that worked and start over like we are doing with some of the financial regulations that are coming into place
today.
I
mean, I know a lot of people in real estate who complain that new federal regulations force them to choose appraisers from their markets at random, rather than using guys that they know and trust, guys that they know, or women that they know the area and know what's going on in the market.
Absolutely.
But these two things, you're saying, can be used in conjunction. That can make the regulations work more smoothly, and obviously the system can help people who may not know enough about the area or the business to make a better, more informed decision.
Exactly right. I mean, the guidelines that you're talking about, they're not really regulations, they're more guidelines that have come out, have been from the standpoint of trying to promote independence in ordering valuations, in all settlement services for that matter, but specifically valuations in this case. So I think you can achieve the goal of independence and then combine those with available data and systems to verify and validate that information. The key here is to make sure we have an accurate value, right? From origination all the way through securitization.
Well, speaking of value, I think at this point we're really trying to figure out what the true value is of real estate in this market. At this point, do you think our appraisers are lowballing in terms of their appraisals, and that's kind of pushing down prices at this point, or is it that there just is a lack of demand?
I think actually,
because if you question the system now, I mean, do we trust these prices that are out there?
I don't think it's a lowballing issue. I think the actual concern is still overvaluation on the appraisal side. Overvaluation.
Well, there's a new data segment that's available to the appraiser now, which really wasn't considered before, and that's the pending foreclosures and how that overhang is going to impact the market going forward.
But you're always going to have inflated values, aren't you, in a market where appraisers and brokers benefit from higher prices?
And that's the issue, and that's, again, the goal for independence and trying to validate all of this data. So when an appraisal comes in, bumping it up against external sources like an AVM, historic data, to verify and validate that information. Is that appraiser validly licensed in the particular state? Issues of geographic competence, where an appraiser in San Francisco isn't conducting an appraisal down in LA. All of this needs to be checked and validated on the front end before the loan is originated and closed, and then as it goes to the secondary, as it goes into the secondary markets.
Dave, got 20 seconds for you.
There's a good value point that can come out of that too. When you're doing automated valuations, you begin to build a historic profile of appraiser performance as well. And I don't know if you track the statistic as well as either, but you can see as you look into the marketplace and you see, oh well, here's another appraiser from John Smith, and we've had this problem or a pattern of problems from this appraiser 16 times in the past. As a result, we need to look at these particular things. The AVM can do a really good job of identifying those people.
All right, so they disagreed before they came on, and now they're meshing together. We brought them together. Thanks so much for joining us, Dave and Doris. We're going to take a quick break here, come back and talk about cars as well as working out.
We're working it out. We are.